The way we framed the data was around the question of cultural citizenship. That even if people don't have a juridical relationship to the state that's regular, whatever that may be, green card or citizenship, or on the way to one or the other, that they have rights and dignities as people, that they need to be recognized as people in our own culture, in this American culture. And so with Latino gay men, they have all these dual things going on. One is, if they come from outside, they have to be socialized as Americans, right? And they have to be socialized as gay men. And there's these two systems of socialization. So they have to figure out, well, how can I be a Latino gay man in these spaces, and how can I be part of this American thing that I'm learning about at the same time? And there are challenges with all of that, right? That sort of duality that people are living with.
It's related to the comment from the gentleman in the Southwest who talked about being both Latino and gay and incorporating those two identities simultaneously, and so not necessarily privileging one over the other, right? So, you know, these kind of layers of identity which are important.
The other thing that was clear to me, and I think that that's a really another agenda for research, is this whole question of people's relationship to faith-based communities. Overwhelmingly, Latinos will identify with one community or another. You know, some people are Catholic, some people are Protestant, some people do traditional indigenous religions or maybe Afrocentric religions in the case of the Caribbean. And religion was a place where people wanted to have a community of faith, to be affirmed in their faith, to have their relationships affirmed in the faith, but at the same time a place where people felt a lot of homophobia, a lot of stigma was reproduced, which inevitably increases, you know, sort of phobia about HIV.
And even if they weren't necessarily religious themselves, they're impacted by religion in these other ways, right? So it's that some family members or the community members are religious, and therefore, you know, they may not be at the pew, but they're still impacted by these religious ideologies.
And I mean, the other aspect of it in terms of ideologies is also gender ideologies. Like, what is it to be a man? You know, what is appropriate for a man to do? People use the term machismo all the time, but we know that was created by non-Latino social scientists, right? But it's a hyperactive masculinity that in one sense, you're both like supposed to be, or you're supposed to be attracted to, right? And that creates all kinds of risk, you know, what it means. And that lovely example of the top-bottom, you know, top is masculine, bottom is feminine, the bottom has to take care of the top. Or the notion that if you're a man, you should be married, you should have a family, you have to produce children. And when we know that it's more complicated than that, a lot of Latino gay men do have children, do play parenting roles of all kinds, right? So this is another aspect of the culture that can be a real challenge for people.
And they also don't identify as gay.
Right.
Talk
about that.
Or MSM for whatever that category
right.
is. And so I think that that's the other thing, is about kind of recognizing alternative sexualities and the kind of impact, and how that is very different in the U.S. context than it is in the Latin American context, and really thinking about transnational ties to these essentially practices and ideologies, these, you know, the acts or the idea of having to maintain a family while also having a desire for same-sex sex, you know, so it's a little more complicated.
And what came out also was that, you know, oftentimes we were having a focus group with our Latino gay men. They're like, well, we want Latinas here as well, or we should be having a conversation with Latinas, because again, going back to the concept of this, we are a family and we are impacted. They often felt a need that we need to have this conversation not only amongst ourselves, but also engage our Latinas, our mothers, our sisters, our tias.
Our female partners.
Our female partners, exactly.
Yeah, they're right. You know, it's like,
yeah,
you know,
they see
like
themselves embedded within these social networks, right?
Right?
And so they're not necessarily, even though some Latino gay men may be socially isolated, and some of them have made choices around immigration as a result of their sexuality, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're functioning in such isolated ways in reality, or that there are some families that are much more welcoming and much more, but just don't have the tools. So part of it is actually integrating services, not at the individual level, but really in the kind of social context in which they're embedded.
And I think further research needs to be done in terms of those who have been accepting. And we often talk about Latino gay men who get pushed out from their family, but how often do we talk to those Latino gay men whose family has openly welcomed them and kind of pull some of that, some lessons learned from that? I think there's a further need to kind of dive into that. You know, what are Latino gay men, what are they facing, you know, and not just showcasing, well, if you come out, you know your family's gonna push you out. Because already if they're getting that message before they even come out, you know, that's gonna perpetuate fear and stigma about coming out.
There's lots of ways for people to come out without saying I'm gay, right? There's lots of ways in which things are entendido, you know, they're understood without you saying it, you know, and basically people just assume, well, you know, my family's not stupid. I mean, they see this guy living in the same, there's one bedroom, you know, there must be something going on. But there's also, what does the family do? They welcome the person, they ask the person to family dinners, they consider him sort of a tío or an uncle of some sort. So there's lots of ways in which this sort of like you're closeted or you're out. There's this whole middle ground where people are accommodating both themselves and their families are accommodating them. And there are public figures that are coming out.
Right.
Ricky Martin, of course, came out during the time where
we were the
time that we were the time that we were doing this study, Ricky Martin came out.
As
and
a fortunate gay man.
Francisco insisted upon me.
Well, I thought it was an important question to ask.
Yeah, he brought it up in the focus groups.
And oftentimes we asked, you know, do you know any gay Latino leaders in your city, in your town, in this country? And oftentimes the answer was no.
Right.
And so then we would further ask the question, and I would further ask the question, like, you know, Ricky Martin's coming out. Did that impact you? Did that have an influence on you? Did that further conversation at the family table, you know, because we saw it in the media, right?
Yep, that's right.
Did that media coverage do anything for homophobia potentially in our community?
And actually, I think people said that it was a model for people, and it's not a model in the sense that they're going to be multimillionaire stars, right? But that it was at least a recognition that this person had a family, that he was a recognized person, he was a cultural authority in the stuff that he does. So those kinds of things are important. You know, of course, I was, you know, making fun of Francisco saying, no, this is, but actually, I'm glad you asked that question.
Part of what we hope that this report does is really say, okay, Latinos are situated in many complexities. Those complexities are sometimes paradoxical, and sometimes they just need to be better understood, and you know, the messaging and the services need to be tailored in that direction.